So my comments are really focused on what happens to all the wealth that's created and the productivity created by AI, open model, proprietary model, or otherwise, and how is it distributed in society. So it's a sovereign issue in one sense, but it's really about distribution that I want to talk about. Before I do, I just want to note, given the previous presentations in this panel, the example of Vietnam. Vietnam is doing exactly what you just said. Vietnam says we're building a third stack. The stack is from the hardware to the software to the computing to the interface with the user. A third stack by putting together modular elements from different models. Having fought wars with both U.S. and China, Vietnam says we want to be independent. We don't want China's centralized model. We don't want America's proprietary model. We're training our own data. We're using our own data to train. We're doing our own language models and our own cloud computing. So it's a third stack between China and the U.S., the dominant models that I think people should pay attention to Vietnam. It's interesting. And just like in the 50s and 60s, the talk was about non-alignment in terms of communist versus capitalist competition. Now Vietnam talks about infrastructure non-alignment, that you're not in one camp or the other camp. So I think it's an interesting model in terms of thinking about internet sovereignty. But let me get to my topic, which is about distribution of all the wealth that comes from AI. So just this morning, actually, in the New York Times, there was an article by the conservative Catholic commentator Russ Duteau about the Pope's most recent encyclical on preference for the poor. And he says, well, it's very good for the Pope to say all these things, but it needs to be a little more meat on the bone. It's very vague. What is distribution and distributional justice mean? What does it really mean, social justice, in the age of AI? Which is the topic, obviously, of this meeting. So that's what I want to talk about today. From his first comment as pontiff, Pope Leo XIV has emphasized the urgency of addressing distributional justice in the age of AI. No doubt he has in mind updating Rerum, Novarum, the title of this conference, by his namesake Leo XIII on the revolutionary change of the Industrial Revolution, which was released in 1891, the encyclical. That social teaching of the church called for distributional justice, railed against exploitation of workers, but also argued that the ultimate answer, chapter 46, the long encyclical, that the answer to inequality ultimately would be the policies, quote, that induces as many as possible of the people to become owners. What then does distributional justice look like in the age of AI? Now, in the coming decades, the whole economy of nations will become an AI economy as technology rapidly spreads across all enterprises, from accounting to grocery stores to factories. Wealth creation and productivity growth will boom, but there will be increasingly divorced from jobs and income as intelligent machines displace gainful employment. Economic disparity will accelerate with the diminishing value of labor and the need to employ humans at the scale of the industrial age. The inequality gap between those who own the robot through direct or financial investments and those who labor for a living will inexorably grow. Even if new classes of tasks and functions are created by AI, as David Autor talked about yesterday, the bargaining power of labor will inevitably be diluted, if not disabled. Top hedge fund manager Ray Dalio recently warned that the top 10% will benefit more than anyone else from the AI revolution, while multitudes will be losers. He is alarmed that our divided societies will fracture further unless there is some form of distribution that shares the wealth. Now, the chasm of wealth in the US today is already driven primarily by the gap between those who hold financial investments and those who don't. The top 10% own 93% of all equity. In Europe, the top 10% own nearly 60% of all wealth, while the bottom 50% own 5%. In Latin America, the richest 10% own 77% of wealth, while the bottom 50% owns 1%. So an effective policy for the digital age must address the key dynamic driving inequality, not try to patch things up after wealth is already distributed. That dynamic is embodied in Thomas Piketty's famous formula. You remember he wrote the book Capital in the 21st Century. His famous formula, R is greater than G, meaning the compounded rate of return on capital is greater than the rate of growth of the economy. In other words, those who invest are earning compounding returns, and those who don't are just flat and falling behind. So those who even think about social impact of AI in Silicon Valley tend to embrace the concept of universal basic income. But that is essentially a redistributive transfer that doesn't move the needle on inequality. The alternative concept of universal basic capital, in which all have ownership share in the robots, so to speak, is a better fit for the digital economy of the future. It invites all those who mostly labor for their living to be able to earn value from investments like the rich. In short, it is pre-distribution, not redistribution. The way to address the inequality of what Pope Leo called in this recent encyclical, the bubble of comfort and luxury of the super rich, is not just to break up concentration at the top, but to build wealth from below. The best way to fight inequality in the digital age is to spread the equity around. Now, the primary instrument for achieving this aim would be universal savings and investment funds, which all participate through individual or family accounts that hold shares across the AI economy and earn returns on those investments as productivity grows and new wealth is created. Now, although it is a supplemental pension scheme funded by employer-employee contributions, Australia's superannuation fund illustrates the wealth-generating power of compounded return. That savings pool, initiated in 1992 by Labor Prime Minister Paul Keating to capture productivity gains, has now grown to nearly 4.2 trillion US dollars, greater than the GDP of Australia. The enormous fund invests assets around the world and in Australia, including infrastructure. The return on those investments to the plan's participants has made Australia among the nations with the highest average wealth in the world at $555,000 per voting age adult. Embryonic forms of UBC, Universal Basic Capital, are being implemented across ideological divide, including and especially for those without the resources for savings in the first place. For example, the Liberal governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and the MAGA members of Congress are both championing a similar version of universal basic capital. The California Kids Investment and Development Savings Program established in California, CalKids, established a college fund account for up to $1,500, $1,500 US dollars for every low-income first grader in California public schools. The money pooled and invested increases in value until withdrawn to pay for post-secondary education. The Republican-sponsored program was passed as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill of Trump's last summer. It creates a so-called MAGA account, Money Account for Growth and Advancement. Starting as early as July 2026, it would initiate by auto-enrollment a $1,000 account for every child under 8 who's an American citizen. All incomes from the investment period of 18 years, you can't withdraw it to 18 years, would be tax advantaged, 18 years old, would be tax advantaged. Families can add up to $5,000 per year to the account. Profits could be used for education, starting a small business, helping purchase a home, or other ways. Various similar baby bond schemes have been underway elsewhere, including the UK Child Trust Fund, which was shut down after the austerity in 2011, but started in 2003. In terms of encouraging investment and savings, it was a clear success. During its lifetime, 6.3 million new savings accounts were opened. As of April, the total market value of the accounts was £9 billion, or $11 billion, of which the government contributed only $2 billion. In other words, the government puts in a basic deposit and it grows, the wealth grows, accruing to the family or the individual. In 2006, Germany will begin a similar early start pension account to encourage savings and more risk taking on investments. Every child from 6 years old to 17 will receive a 10 euro per month deposit in their account to which their families can add that will be invested in capital markets with all capital gains tax-free. Even the Italian region of Trentino is launching a pilot along similar lines. Such programs are either financed out of government surplus, the innovative design of revolving fund revenue bonds, or borrowing in debt markets. Speaking of Latin America before, countries that are dependent on commodity exports, all those soybeans and lithium that goes to the U.S. or the soybeans now to the Chinese market from Brazil and Argentina, a portion could be steered into sovereign wealth funds that invest in the Latin America stack, AI stack, with dividends paid out to citizens. So there are many ways, kind of a Mercosur of a consortium of investment, because all the things that we've pointed out before, the data is there, the people are there, the technology is available, but the money doesn't exist. In any case, to conclude, universal basic capital is clearly an idea whose time has come. By embracing the concept in an update of Rerum Novarum, the social teachings of the Church would contribute greatly to how distributive justice is addressed as we move from the industrial age to the deep end of the information revolution. The moral authority of the Church's blessing would universalize the appeal of universal basic capital. Thank you.